Hey YouTube, Kira Twig here, bringing you all my Fairy Tale Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck profile for post Ghosts from the Past. With the release of Ghosts from the Past, we were given some new Fairy Tale support. For those of you who don't know, we'll be talking about the Fairy Tale, spelled T-A-I-L, instead of the deck that focuses on Golden Castle of Stromberg. These were a bunch of different spellcaster type monsters that we've gotten over the years in Yu-Gi-Oh! And we actually have one of them on the ban list, Fairy Tale Snow, so sadly we won't be seeing that one in this deck profile. But a pretty good amount of support that we received that focused on just all the different spellcaster cards that we can use, along with some of the Charmer support that can mix in pretty well for the fact that the Fairy Tale monsters all share one similarity, having 1,850 attack points. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So for the Fairy Tale monsters, I want to run 3 Fairy Tale Rachka, but I only have the 2, so just substituting in the 1 will be the Fairy Tale Snow. Like I said, this card is on the ban list, so it will be missed in this deck profile. Maybe one day down the road, we'll be able to make a Fairy Tale deck with Snow, maybe even just back at 1. We'll have to wait and see if that time will ever come. But with Fairy Tale Rachka, you do want to run 3 of this card. When this card is normal summon, you can make your opponent gain 500 life points. Then your opponent looks at the top 3 cards in your deck, and you choose one of them for you to add to your hand. Also shuffle the rest back into the deck. You can only use this effect of Fairy Tale Rachka once per turn, and once per battle. If this card battles before damage calculation, you can send this card to the graveyard. So you have options for the setup, with this card being able to avoid an attack, but also more for the fact that your opponent will set up some of the cards you may add to your hand off of this card. So very, very useful for that search power, since a good majority of all the cards in this deck will run together in exchange just for, making your opponent gain 500 life points. I definitely think it's worth it for them to give, you a card. So definitely want to run 3 of this. Works also very, very well with the new continuous spell, which we'll get to in just a bit. For the other Fairy Tale support, I also run 3 Fairy Tale Luna. When it's normal summon, you can add 1 spellcaster monster with 1,850 attack from your deck to your hand, and once per turn, quick effect, you can target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls. Your opponent can send 1 card of that monster's name from their deck or extract to the graveyard and negate this effect. Otherwise, return both this card and that monster to the hand. So it's great if your opponent only has 1 copy of that card in the field, so you have to kind of time when you want to use Fairy Tale Luna against your opponent, but also just being able to search out your other Fairy Tale monsters makes it all the better, because then you just have more and more cards to summon out later on during the game also. I also run 3 Fairy Tale Sleeper. With this card having a flip effect, you can special summon 1 monster from your hand. During either player's turn, when your opponent activates, the activate effects become change 1 face-up monster your opponent controls to face down defense position. You can only use this effect of Fairy Tale Sleeper once per turn. So being able to basically have this option when your opponent activates the effect, it becomes this option. And giving you a special summon from the hand can just get you more and more resources onto the field. Normally you'll want to normal summon Fairy Tale Luna, but having other options like with just having monsters on the field, including just resources to go into, is a big part of this card altogether. And then just being able to rely on more and more monsters on the field means you also have more access to your extra deck. And this is kind of a weaker version of Fairy Tale Luna, just being able to still have that flip option, just being able to turn your opponent's monsters, and having that tribute option of one of your other monsters means it's the best option to go into for the special summon of another Fairy Tale monster onto the field. And lastly, for the last of the Fairy Tale monsters we have for the main deck, I also run 3 Fairy Tale Rella. Neither player can target monsters on the field with spell cards or effects except for this one. And once per turn, you can discard 1 spell to equip 1 spell card from your hand, deck, or graveyard to this card, but return the equipped spell to the hand during the end phase. So with our Fairy Tale Rella in the deck, we're given access to an equipped spell lineup that we can run in the deck. I decided to focus on the ones that focus more on spellcasters, which we'll get to when we go over these spells. But this just gives us more search options, basically also discarding some unneeded spells to our graveyard, and we can much more benefit with some of the other equipped spells when, like I said, we'll go over them when we get to the spells altogether. For the final lineup of main deck monsters, I also decided to run 1 of each of the familiar possessed. We do run some of the familiar engine in the deck, so just running 1 of each one. So 1 Area, 1 Dark, 1 Hida, 1 Asa, 1 Win, and 1 Lina, I believe is how you pronounce it. We will be getting the Link monster for Lina at the end of Lightning Overdrive as well, I believe. But all these monsters just give you more search power, whether it be in the form of Fairy Tale Luna, so with it also comes extra deck options, and more support for some of the Charmer support for the Spell and Trap lineup we run. But all of them sharing the 1,850 attack makes it that much more consistent for the play, and just being able to have some more options, especially especially with Lina for the light monster setup on the field, makes it all the better. And that is it for the monsters. We'll now move on to the spells. I run 3 Fairy Tale Tales. It's a continuous spell. You can reveal one spellcaster monster in your hand with 1850 attack and a different name than the monsters you control. Immediately after this effect resolves, normal summon or set it. And you can only use this effect of Fairy Tale Tales once per turn. The first time each turn, you would take battle damage or effect damage while you control a spellcaster monster with 1850 original attack. You take no damage. So with it, you have the special summon option since you have to just control a different name card, and since we have one of each of the familiar possessed, it also works well when we have one of the different fairy tale monsters on the field, giving us a free special summon onto the field for that resource. And with other cards like Fairy Tale Sleeper and Fairy Tale Luna, we just get more setup for plenty of extra deck plays, since the majority of these cards all share the fact that they are level 4 monsters with 1850 attack. So all of these cards will be consistent with one another, and just having one of these on the field always guarantees us a second resource to use as well against our opponent. And I also run 2 Awakening of the Possessed with this card. Monsters you control gain 300 attack for each different attribute you control. Charmer and familiar possessed monsters you control cannot be destroyed by card effects. And if a spellcaster monster with 1850 original attack is normal or special summoned to your field, draw 1 card. You can only use this effect of Awakening of the Possessed once per turn. So all of our main deck monsters will benefit from this draw power. So having this continuous spell on the field and also Fairy Tale Tales means we will have special summon options plus the draw power all together, and protection for those monsters, plus attack boosts with all the different attributes. With having one of each of the different Charmer attributes means we'll have powered up, different attribute Fairy Tale monsters in the field also, all sharing 1850 attack, means they can hit over a good number of cards if you at least have 3 or 4 on the field altogether. And moving on, we also run 3 Ties of the Brethren. This will come in handy the most with the Fairy Tales. You really won't be able to summon out any of the other ones since they have to be the same type, attribute, and level. But being able to still have options to go into, let's say, Familiar Possessed Lina, and then any of the Fairy Tale monsters. Very, very useful since they're spellcasters, light attribute, and level 4. You won't be able to special summon anything else, but if you can set this play up with your Fairy Tale Tales and also just, having Awakening of the Possessed set up also, you'll have the go-to for just more draw power and power boost and more difficulty for your opponent to get over it. And once again, for more draw power, once again with the spellcasters, if we can get a good number on the field. So 3 Spellbook of Knowledge. You send to the graveyard either 1 spellcaster monster you control or 1 other spellbook from your hand. It's going to be the spellcaster you control to draw 2 cards. So if you have multiple spellcasters on the field, you can use your Spellbook of Knowledge to at least send one of them to draw 2 more cards. Potentially cards that could be, easier to special summon out, or, the additional normal summon with Fairy Tale Tales. You name it. If there's one on the field that's already used its play, or if there's just a Charmer, Familiar Possessed on the field that's just not doing anything for your plays, and you want some more consistency with some other draw power, and you can, basically make more use of the Fairy Tale monsters in the field, Spellbook of Knowledge comes in handy for that. For the equip spells, I run 1 Bound Wand and 2 Wonder Wand. These are the ones that work with Fairy Tale Rella. So with the discard of a spell, which we do run a good number of spells, if you have any multiples in your hand, that could be the preferred discard for Rella. Then being able to equip one of the equip spells onto it, Wonder Wand, and just Bound Wand for power, and Wonder Wand giving you the additional 500 attack, but also draw power as well. With Wonder Wand being able to draw into at least 4 different cards using Knowledge and Wonder Wand all together means you can get into some of the more important play cards, including the spell setup, which we spoke of before, or just the needed Fairy Tale monsters to work with. Most of the time I do like to see Rachka as set up on the field, so when I can draw into it that much easier, using these spell cards and having searchable equip spells makes Rella very, very much staple in the deck altogether. With the final spells being 1 Harpy's Feather Duster and 1 Monster Reborn, opponent's back row can be a big shutdown for a lot of my plays. That's why I like to run this card. And Monster Reborn, just giving me more resources on the field, always comes in handy. If you want to try any other spell options, you can try Pot of Avarice. Maybe it would just be an additional card for recycling some of your other 1850 attack monsters back into the main deck to reuse. And that is it for the spells. Moving on to the traps. You can run Infinite Impermanence. I have Call the Haunted in here just because one of the biggest benefits you have is having more and more different monsters on the field. So being able to have just like your Fairy Tale lineup and then being able to special summon another one back onto the field means you have more and more resources available to your continuous spells once they're set up also. So very, very useful with Call the Haunted. And the final lineup for the traps: 2 Rivalry of Warlords. Each player can only control 1 type of monster. Send all the ones to the graveyard. So the main one to go for will be Spellcasters. I thought of running Secret Village of Spellcaster. If you were to do that, you can take out the final trap lineup with these 2 cards being Secret Village of Spellcasters, and the last card being Possessed Partnerships. Just for more special summon options can be the Terraforming Search. But I do like the trap with the familiar possessed monsters we run in the deck, just as more special summon power altogether. You can even just run a 3rd copy of Rivalry of Warlords if you didn't want to run the Possessed Partnership trap card. It was just more of the support for the familiar possessed lineup in the deck, and I definitely did like it with the Awakening of the Possessed continuous spell in the deck. And that is it for the main deck. We'll now move on to the extra deck. I run 1 of each of the Charmer Link monsters. I don't have Hida in the deck. If you wanted to run that as well, you can take out 1 of the other Link monster options, but still great to go into and then just take resources from your opponent depending on what monster you summon out. I also run 1 Acacia Magician. It's a spellcaster, so I'm not limited with Rivalry of Warlords when I summon this card. Clara and Rushka, just for another link option with my spellcaster monsters that were normal summon. If you wanted to run Hida, you can always take this card out for that Charmer option. Also 1 Hip Potion Engen, since the Fairy Tale's main point of the deck are the light attribute, so a big boost there. 1 Barricade Board Blocker to recycle cards like Fairy Tale's Tail, and also 1 Nightmare Cerberus, 1 Nightmare Phoenix, 1 Nightmare Unicorn, and 1 Borlode Dragon to finish off the Link monsters. And for the Xyz monsters, I run 1 Perform Mage Trapeze Magician, 1 Downer Magician. Normally I like it for the overlay, but if I am locked into Rivalry, just having another spellcaster option. I even considered Alchemic Magician, so if you wanted to run that instead of this, it's another card to consider. And 1 Baguska and 1 Tornado Dragon, just good rank 4s to go into when you have 2 monsters on the field, which can be easily done with the additional normal summon or any of our special summon resources. And then as for some of the go-to plays, like I spoke of already, if you go for the Fairy Tale Luna normal summon, being able to then search out a monster with 8, 10, or 50 attack. Most of the time I do like to go for the Fairy Tales, and then having the option for your Fairy Tale Tails activated on the field. This will allow you then to summon a different name monster than one you control immediately after this card for the normal summoner set. So then you'll normal summon your Fairy Tale Rella, and then giving you the option to target protection with Rella. You will then discard a spell from your hand to search out one of the equip spells, whether Bound 1 is your choice for more power plays or Wonder 1 for the draw power. Being able to then activate this card means you can send Rella and the Wonder 1 to the graveyard to draw 2 additional cards. If you want to go another route, instead of the search for your Rella, you can summon out Fairy Tale Luna. Then use the search of Fairy Tale Tails to search out Fairy Tale Rochka, and then summon out Fairy Tale Rochka when it's normal summon, since it was an additional normal summon thanks to Fairy Tale Tails. You'll be able to have your opponent gain the 500 life to then check the top 3 cards of your deck, adding an additional available card to your hand. Then having 2 monsters on the field, you can go for the overlay of choice, whether you can go for the Baguska stall or destruction against your opponent with Tornado Dragon, or even just more of an attack option with Perform Mage Trapeze Magician if you have the special summon for 1 additional monster on the field already. With 1 additional play being a big focus on just the Fairy Tale Sleeper with the set option. If this card is flip face up, you get the special summon of a card from your hand. So you can then search out. It doesn't matter. You won't be getting the normal summon effect off of these cards also. So you'll mostly have that card be as a kind of side option for the Fairy Tale Luna play in the deck, where you'll be able to then tribute this monster to flip one of your opponent's monsters face down. So just remember the defensive strategy. That will come up with Fairy Tale Sleeper. And then just having more cards to rely on if your opponent has that card set. You can always use other cards like Spellbook of Knowledge too if you have the solo Fairy Tale sent to the graveyard for either more graveyard setup or even just to be special summon back onto the field afterwards. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoy the video. It's definitely an interesting deck. I never really thought that we'd be able to make a full, focus on the Fairy Tale monsters, but with their differing attack stats, they really do work very, very well with the familiar possessed monsters. So that's the reason I decided to go on that focus for the deck profile. And until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Twig out.